Minnesota. This is Christie Thompson with Christie Legal. I am a divorce and custody mediator and paralegal here in Minnesota. And I am here with a group of folks who you also need to communicate with and receive services from when you're divorcing, because when you divorce, there's a lot more than just the legal stuff. And so Anne and Darren, if you could do like a 1-minute intro of yourself and what you do.
Hi, everybody. I'm Darren Jorgenson with Remax Real Estate. I've been selling real estate in the surrounding Twin City metro area, Hennepin, Ramsey, pretty much all the major 10 counties and within an hour and a half radius of the Mall of America. But I've been selling real estate and helping people, through marriage, through divorce, estates for about 33 years now. So I'm a great resource of information if you have any questions on how to handle a variety of situations. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ann Carter with Summit Mortgage. I am a residential loan officer with Summit Mortgage, NMLS 211972 and 1041 respectively. I am licensed in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Florida. We have other loan officers in our company who are licensed in multiple states. We have branches around the country. So if you're divorcing and moving, I can help you find somebody reputable in another state. And if you're just have questions about how do I handle this or what are my options, just feel free to call and talk because you need resources at this time, and I'm here for you. Ann Carter with Summit Mortgage.
Thanks, guys. So if you are considering a divorce, or if you're very committed to getting divorced, here are some of the legal things that you're going to want to know about before you start the process, because you are definitely going to have to handle these through the divorce process. So the first thing is the division of the marital assets. And the largest asset often is the home. And that's why I have Ann and Darren here with me. I'm not going to talk about specifics of the home. What I'm going to talk about is how we divide those assets. Now, there are two types of assets. First, there are the marital assets. Those are the assets that you purchased or accrued during the marriage. So if you bought a house, bought a car, if you put money into an investment account, if you put money into your retirement accounts, if you bought NFTs or Bitcoins, those are harder to value, but we're going to have all of your assets. We're going to get all the information on those assets. And then we're going to say, okay, who owns them now? And we're going to put those in each person's column. And then we're going to look at that and we're going to say, okay, is it an equal? Is each party having an equal amount of assets? Or do we need to divide these assets according to the laws of Minnesota, which is dividing 50-50? So there are exceptions to the 50-50 rule. We're not going to get into those right now unless somebody, sends me a question while we're talking and would like to know about that. That's something that we can cover during a free initial consultation. And so, if one party has $1 million of the assets and another party has 500,000, then we need to make sure that each party is walking away with about 750,000 of marital assets. Now, if the home is the largest marital asset and say it has like $500,000 of equity in it, and we need to divide that equity, then you are going to get a mortgage out, probably for more than the current mortgage, and you're going to give some of that money to your spouse, and Ann will help you with that. You might want to sell the house, and then you want to just divide that money from the sale of the house, and Darren can help you with that. So we are just going to see what you guys have, who wants what, how the assets are currently divided. And then we're going to help you, or I'm going to help you reach an equitable division of the assets. And so those are marital assets. Now, non-marital assets are the assets that you came into the relationship with. So maybe you bought a car before the marriage, or you have like a whole bunch of, you're like in a band and you had a whole bunch of musical equipment. Or maybe you had some money in your retirement funds or investment accounts before the marriage. All of that is non-marital. It will be subtracted from the amount you have in those accounts right now and will be put in a different part of the divorce documents. It doesn't get divided during the divorce. So then we also have to divide the debts. Sometimes this is actually the worst part for some people, because some people don't understand that when you are married, you are in many ways legally and always financially one person. So it doesn't matter who created those debts or if they were created 5 years ago, as long as you were married 5 years ago, you're both responsible for those debts. And oftentimes people are really unhappy about that. So the division of the debts is based on ability to pay. And what that means in layman's terms is whoever earns more pays more, because that person who earns more has a greater ability to pay the debts. So say you guys, both of you together, have $100,000 of debts, and this is separate from the mortgage. And one of you earns $100,000 a year and one of you earns $50,000 a year. The person who earns $100,000 a year is going to take twice as much of that $100,000 of debt than the person who earns $50,000 a year, because that person has twice as much income. Now, if you guys want to agree to some different type of arrangement, and it's reasonable and the judge believes it's reasonable and equitable, then you can do that as well. So debts include credit card debts, second mortgages, any kind of bank loan, student loans. Yep. You know, even if your husband or wife has student loans, if they accrued those during the marriage, you are partially responsible for them. Or say you or your spouse signed a student loan as a co-signer for one of your grandkids or one of your kids. That is a marital debt, as long as it happened during the marriage. So the last thing will be the sharing of the children. And that's a very complex topic that I'm just going to touch on. And there are two types of custody. There's legal custody, and that is making decisions about the medical and dental care, the religion, and the education of the child. Like most of the time, it is joint legal custody. It's very difficult to take legal custody away from a parent. And then there's physical custody, and that's what people are normally battling about in court. There are two types of physical custody. First, there's sole physical custody, and that's really a misnomer because nobody solely or only has physical custody of the child. But what it means is that one parent has more parenting time with the child than the other. And there could be a lot of reasons for this. You know, maybe one parent travels a lot, one parent works a lot. You know, we'll just talk about your specific situation. And often the schedule when it's sole physical custody is 1 weekday with the non-custodial parent, and then every other weekend with that non-custodial parent. There's a lot of ways to do it, but that's just one of the most common ways. Then there is joint physical custody, and that's where both the mom and the dad have equal or pretty close to equal parenting time. And, you know, this is often used when neither parent works tons of hours and, you know, they live fairly close to each other. So there's not like a huge commute for the kids between the two parents' homes. And there are a lot of ways to do this as well. You know, one of them is the 2-2-3, and that is where the child is with mom 2 days and then dad 2 days, and then flip-flops with mom and dad every other weekend. You could also do it, one day on, one day off, Monday through Thursday, and then every other weekend, or you could get even more creative. Um, as long as we take the best interests of the children into consideration, you guys can get as creative as you'd like to. And that is actually the beauty of filing for divorce jointly, is that the judge is not deciding for you what all of your stuff is going to be. You are just making decisions within the parameters of the law, and you are making decisions that fit your life and your children much better than the judge will know what to do. So that's just a little bit of stuff about divorce law. And, I'm sure it was a little boring and complicated. So you'll definitely want to have a free initial consultation with me. So now let's talk about what's probably your most valuable asset. So Darren, could you first start by talking about if people can't hold on to that house and how you help people who are divorcing sell their current home? And then could you talk about how you help them find a new house? Thanks so much.
Well, the main focus that they're going to have in this situation is obviously first determining the value of the property. That'll give them some insight. And then also I can set them up with an appraiser, either one or two appraisers that can give another opinion of value that is going to be more apt, that you're going to be able to use that in the courtroom. Because what I do is basically a market analysis or a broker's price opinion. And then you take that along with an appraisal, and then you got two basically forms of value, and that can be used more effectively. So then, depending on the equity or the equity sharing or how the equity is split in the house, then that's going to determine the down payment source that someone may have to move forward. So then I can set them up with like Ann, who can do a pre-approval letter based on the equity being used as a down payment, or if they can add another down payment source from maybe in a retirement account, savings, or checking or whatnot. And then I can go through and kind of show them what's available, and then take them out and start looking at some properties. And then timing of the transactions is critical too. Obviously, we have to sell the home, we have to get that home closed, and then we have to sell the person that you're buying. We have to sell that seller on the fact that your home's going to close and that your loan is approved, and then Christie is saying that the divorce will be final, or it will be settled in a situation where you can sell and buy, depending on what type of title you're currently in, an ownership and equity split that you have negotiated. So all that stuff comes into play. And again, a lot of these services, especially up front, it's free information. If you want to contact one of us three, we can help you through it. We can sit down with you. There's really no consultation charge on my end. So it's great information to have. And obviously, like anything in life, it's great to be proactive and plan, ahead, and take this stuff so you can do this stuff most efficiently and effective. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, just reach out to me. And I'd be more than happy to sit down with them and help them go through this. Thanks.
So Darren, selling a house when you're not happy with the other party is probably pretty challenging. So what do you do to try to work with two people who might not be so happy to communicate with each other when you're helping them sell their house?
Well, you have to be somewhat of obviously a neutral arbitrator, and then you have to work with both parties. Both parties may choose to work separately or meet with you separately. Both parties may want to meet with you together. And then you can advise people of the situation. Sometimes one party might move out of the house. They might go rent. They might go live with a family member. And then the other person stays there during the showings. So there's a variety of ways of handling this, because obviously in order to sell the house, we're going to need to show the house. And what happens is you need both parties cooperating on showing the house. So, and that's another area of consultation that you need somebody, a realtor with experience, that can sit down and explain to both parties the benefits of cooperating with each other to reach the ultimate objective. I've seen all kinds of situations even maybe things like sabotage or sabotaging the sale of the home, or all kinds of situations. And all that needs to be explained to both parties, the pitfalls, and maybe doing some actions that may not be in your best end result. So, and that comes through dealing with this many times and dealing with parties and knowing how to explain it through situational awareness and experience. So
Awesome. And then could you brag about yourself a little bit about how when when you're helping people find another house, like the access that you have to foreclosures and that kind of thing?
well, yeah, and the access I have too, and that's going to, a lot of that depends on the financial condition of the client. So there may be some sales that are desperate, like a wholesaler or a foreclosure, or some sales, and they may want cash. So that could eliminate, or that could be a possibility depending on how much somebody wants to spend. Right now, there's a lot of properties that we call them coming soon, or they're pre-listed, and I can get them into those properties. There's also a lot of properties that I have access to. We call them wholesalers. The wholesalers are a lot of times properties, it's pre-foreclosure. So investors go out there and buy properties either at the sheriff's sale or even before that through a mechanic's lien. Could be an IRS lien on the property, and they pay off the liens and they acquire the property. But still, the idea is that they're still going to sell these properties at a discount, a major discount. These properties are out there. Some of them require a lot of work. Some of them require a little bit of work, and some of them are in mint condition. It's all across the board. So I have access to that, and then obviously access to the MLS. And then there's also an MLS matrix program that's new that we can put clients on, where clients can be like basically one of the first ones to know about a property, either through coming soon or it currently comes active, because our computer system is designed to send you out the property that fits your housing parameters that you've given me. And they'll let you know right away when a property comes on the market. They'll also let you know, say, for example, this is a very valuable one. If a sale falls through and it comes back on the market, that sometimes can be one of the most motivating situations where you can just get in there and buy that property. Also, to be one of the first ones to know when the seller does a price reduction. I can let you know that within the first 15 seconds of that happening. So those are all great avenues and access points to possibly get a pretty good deal.
Cool. See, I knew you were super connected. And could you please tell us about how you help people either get, refinance the house when, they're divorcing because they want to have the house all to themselves, or if they're going to go buy another house with Darren. Can you please talk to us about that?
Yes, I certainly can. So one of the things you want to pay attention to is your credit. I know you are going through something that's very, very emotional, and Darren was talking about how sometimes one party will sabotage another party, and that's not a good thing to do. When you're thinking about this, you think about your feelings and think about if somebody does something or says something, does it have anything to do with this transaction? And pay attention to how you respond to it. So don't go out and say, well, he makes more money, I'm just gonna, start buying whatever I want. Because he could, or she, it could be either way in that case, but the other party could sabotage you by stopping to paying the bills. And now everybody's credit is trashed, their credit score is trashed, and now nobody can buy. And it also affects when you're buying, when you're renting a place, when you want to if you need to get a new car, or if you, insurance, they look at credit scores too. So they're very, very, very important. Another thing to think about is you are a stay-at-home spouse, and occasionally some spouses have no credit in their name. The house was in his name, or hers, I'm sorry. cars, maybe they were paid cash for, maybe there's no loan on it. If you know you're going to get divorced and you don't have credit in your name, get some. Get a secure credit card. It may take about 6 months of time before you get a score. But what you want to do is when you get a credit card, that you're trying to build your score, you go out and you pay, put some gas in your car, put that on the credit card. Don't do anything else. Wait for it to cycle through. When the bill comes, then you pay it. And then you do that again each month and you pay it off, and that builds your credit score pretty quickly. So then the other thing you need to think about is income. And if you are paid less than the other one and you're going to be receiving alimony, you need 6 months of proof of income before you can use it as income. And it has to, after those 6 months are gone and you're applying or whatever, it has to extend for another 3 years. And the same goes for child support. So maybe you have 3 children and you have twins that are 16. So you're getting quite a bit of money for the twins, but you will not be able to use that, most likely will not be able to use that child support at all as income, because within 2 years, you won't be receiving it anymore. So those are some of the things you need to think about, income and credit. And if you have questions, just call me and ask, because there's so many scenarios and each one you kind of got to look at individually. So that's what we can do. I can talk to underwriters, I can talk to credit people and say, okay, here's the plan of attack. These are the things we need to do to get you right on, on the road. And maybe that means that you can't buy for a year. Maybe it means it's not necessarily a hard no, it might be a slow yes, which is okay. And sometimes it's nice to have that break and live in an apartment where you don't have to shovel and you don't have to mow and do all those things, and you can just work on healing and getting over what you've just gone through. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Anne. I agree that it is a pain in the butt to shovel and mow, especially that snowstorm that we had last week. Or no, was it this week? I can't even remember. Yeah. I'm so traumatized. I hadn't set up my snowblower and it took like forever to shovel. Thank you so much for bringing out that, you don't want to, rack up a bunch of debts when you're getting ready to divorce. Because, if you're counting on that other person, to be able to, if you're counting on being able to refi your house because you want to stay in the house, but then you've just destroyed both of your credit because, you're married, then you're not going to be able to refi the house. And then also, the other person's not going to be able to refi the house either if it's just really destroyed. And you want somebody to be able to properly financially move on.
Well, and the other thing with that is that if you have a lot of debt, you qualify for less. So you might not be able to refinance. And it could be, if there are children in the situation, you've now hurt your children because nobody can stay in the house. So it's more than just you. And that's the key to think about.
Exactly. And actually a house can be super important. I'm widowed, and when my late husband passed, one of the first things that wasn't, emotional that my son said to me was, "Are we going to be able to stay in this house, Mom?" And it's like a house that you've been living in during your childhood is just provides so much stability. So Anne, when people don't have the best credit, do you have some kind of help or a system or something that you set them up with to help them improve their credit?
Yeah, so there are two options. One is when I run the credit report, if it's low and we need to get it up and by just a small amount, I have programs within that credit report company that I can run and say, within 1 month, if you do this, then if you do this in the next week, I'll rerun the report, and by 1 month later, your credit score should be higher, or where we need it to be. Could be 2 or 3 months that it has to do. I've got somebody else who's had some scores that were in the low 5s and one in the high 4s, which is very low. You really need to look at, if you're doing conventional, you can go 620, but typically if you need down payment assistance, you need to have a middle score of at least 640 or higher. And the other thing to remember is the higher your score, the better purchasing power you have as far as rate. So with people though who have that incredibly lower score, I have a company I use, and they work with them. They have the ability to help them figure out the big picture. And again, it might be not a hard no, but a slow yes. But you'll feel better at the end of that, and you'll be in a great position to be moving forward and purchasing. And
I like your not a hard no, a slow yes. I'm going to use that with my kids. So there's been a lot of talk because the Federal Reserve chairman did something. I haven't read the article yet. And that there are going to be higher interest rates next year. Could you tell us about that?
Not much. They are. I mean, they've been, they will go up. They're still great. So, people a year and a half, 2 years ago were getting 30-year fixed in the high 2s. Those with the high 7s or 800 scores. You can still get them in the mid 3s, low to mid 3s, which is great. It's not bad at all, because at one point rates were 13 and 15%. So they will go up because we're coming into some inflation and things like that. And my crystal ball is broken, so I can't tell you any more than that. It just doesn't work. But yes, there will most likely, because they're not buying certain things, so they're not backing certain things a certain way. And I'm sorry, I just don't have the terminology for it, because I just know, okay, they're gonna go up, but my guess is they'll still be under 4, if not under, for sure under 5. It's not under 4 all next year.
Yeah, what they're doing, it's called quantitative easing. So that's when the Federal Reserve prints money and they buy treasuries, which decreases the interest rates. And that's what they do whenever there's a pandemic, recession, financial crisis. They've done it in the past. It's worked. They print money and they buy treasuries. And then now what they're going to do is they're going to decrease the amount of printing money that they're doing and how many treasuries they're buying. So they're going to reduce their balance sheet, the Federal Reserve is. So when that happens is the interest rates are going to start to go up. So then they're projecting 3 rate hikes next year. But what happens before the rate hikes actually happen by the Fed, the bond traders will run the market, and it'll already be impacted anywhere from 2 to 4 months before the Fed even raises rates, which is happening right now. Because the Fed is basically warning the bond traders, saying, hey, we're going to start doing this. Get ready for this major change. So that's why the rates go up even before the Fed starts actually officially raising rates, because the bond market is preemptively acting on the trading news.
Because they don't want a lot out there at such a low rate where they're not making any money. So that's one reason why they're going to start raising some of their rates now.
And one of the key reasons why they're going to do this is because of everyone's complaining about massive inflation. So the best way to stop inflation is stop the velocity of money in all the printing press money. Because if I take a bunch of printed money and I throw it into your household and you go spend it, that creates inflation. Imagine that throughout the United States. So now they got to rein in the money And that's one of the pillars of inflation that will help dissipate inflation. There's other things happening that's causing inflation at the same time. It's almost like the perfect storm for inflation. But you raise rates, and that will slow inflation down dramatically.
Another way to think about the printing money is like you go Thanksgiving and you have this influx of calories. So therefore you have an inflated weight. And then you have Christmas. And then in January you go, oh, stop with the calories. That'll stop your inflation.
But it's kind of a catch-22. So obviously people like a low house payment. People like a low payment. People would like to have the housing prices come down. And people would like gasoline prices come down. They'd like food costs and auto prices to come down. It's a double-edged sword. The only way to do that is you got to raise rates. So then they're raising rates, and then that will create that, but then you don't get a chance to get the super low rate that you could have like right now in a month or 6 months ago or a year ago. So what's that saying? You snooze, you lose. So interest rates were, I think they were at 2.5 for a while, like a year and a half ago. I mean, so that would have, like, again, that would have been a great time. But again, like what Ann was saying, I started real estate, 33 years ago, and rates were like 12%, 13%. So, but then the house price was cut in half. So it's that double-edged sword. So if you want to buy a home and it fits your family needs and you can afford it, buy a house.
Yeah, I think the thing is, don't worry too much about the rate. Is this a house you want? Can you afford the payment? Then go for it. If you have 3.5% and your neighbor has 3.25 or 2.5, do not worry about it. This is your business. This is your life. You take care of you.
Yeah, and the thing
Excellent
is, you gotta live somewhere.
That's an excellent point, especially during divorce. Like, keep your thoughts and what's going on with the divorce, as much to yourself as possible, except, consult with professionals.
And another thing too, Christy, is I can help somebody if they need to rent or they need temporary housing. I got access points to all that kind of stuff that can make life very convenient for you.
Oh, right. Yep. Because you do also have rental properties and I'm sure more than your own that you know of. And yeah, see, there's a wealth of knowledge here, folks. And all you have to do is contact us to access it. And but definitely do not try doing all of this on your own. About a year ago, a gentleman in Washington County contacted me and said that he and his wife tried to divorce on their own. And they did such a poor job of it that they had a trial scheduled. And for those of you who don't know much about family law, like 0.00 or 0.01%, something like that, of cases go to trial. But they had such an inequitable division of the assets and just no parenting plan. And so the judge was very concerned about the kids and about, the man walking away with such a large percentage of the marital assets, that they were scheduled for a trial. And, he wanted me to help him, but mediators are not for trials. Mediators and paralegals are for when people want to do things the right way and they want to do it the simplest and most affordable way. Trials are for attorneys. So then they ended up having to hire attorneys at $300 an hour. So they could have, hired me and for like, $1,000-$2,000 had a solid divorce agreement. And, their case would have just flown through the Washington County family courts. They would have been divorced right away and they would not be facing this. So don't try to do this alone. Either the divorce part or the housing part, make sure to contact us or, similar professionals who to help you through it. Thanks for your time today, Minnesota. And it's kind of a dreary day today, but find something good that you're grateful for and focus on that. And please contact us for more information.